Everyone, welcome back to another edition of AI Insiders with AI Marketers Guild, and got a guest. I was really excited who agreed to join us today. Not just a prolific author, but when I was getting started in business, and especially really cutting my teeth over at eMarketer, then the Jack Myers report, right? Like the Myers report was like the thing that like people who really wanted to know how the ad industry worked read it, and I think it was actually a little over my head. So I was kind of daunted by it, but like when I first heard the name Jack Myers, it was like this like voice of God in the industry. Um, I've got to
You're
know Jack.
aging yourself, David, because that the Myers report was actually one of the very first daily facts newsletters. So you're
Wow,
definitely dating yourself.
wow. Well, it still stayed relevant as eMarketer was kind of helping shepherd in this digital media age, and then Jack's continued to innovate on the publishing side with Media Village. He's a community builder and author, and actually like yeah, just while I've gotten more tidbits of your background from some of your writing, there's I think it's especially fascinating in your book, which everyone could see who's watching and not just listening, but you see it right behind him. Is it should I be pronouncing it the Tao or the Tao?
It's both. The appropriate is the Tao, spelled Tao, but the Tao of leadership. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, well, the Tao of leadership, where especially when you start going about like what your experience with the ad industry was like in the 70s, and then talking about the what the business landscape could be like in the year 2050. Um, yeah, you're basically looking at 100-year span of the not just the ad industry, but like what business looks like. And so I've got a lot of questions, and some of it too is like, Jack, you're writing about the industry and the business culture that I want to be part of in 25 years from now. But I will let you give a more proper self intro and share anything you want to kick it off. But like I had way more notes than I usually have in
Good.
the book, and
Good. Well,
some of
that's
it was like almost like cursing at the book, like why can't we have this now?
that is true. I do look realistically. The book is really designed to look at the next 5 years, and if you compress that based on the acceleration, the speed of acceleration of innovation in AI and in technology and its impact on marketing and business and impact on all aspects of our lives. Yeah, there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of concerns. There are a lot of fears. There are a lot of challenges. But for those who really understand the dynamics of how AI is creating true opportunity for human creativity, uh, then it is exciting.
It is. One thing I was really surprised by, and I'll check my I'll check my notes here on this because yeah, just reading about empathy coming up in a book like this that's very much about also like frameworks for how to use AI, how to get organizations to adopt it ethically and responsibly, but also proactively. And I did a search on a few things. Um, so the first was empathy comes up 122 times in this book. Okay, and it's, by the way, in a good way. It's not the longest book you'll ever read. Goes fairly quickly. With
Wow.
empathetic, 147 times. Okay, now
Wow, that's interesting.
on top of that, you have Emotional intelligence. I think this was the first one I searched for because it was like this is it's just such a strange word to come up in a book not by a psychologist 60 times. Diverse or diversity came up at a total of 51, and then inclusion, inclusivity, or inclusive combined came up 62. Right? This was really
Well,
strange.
let's hope that Doge is not, hearing that those words being used so often in the book, or maybe it'll be on Ali Velchi's banned book club.
But what even made you want to write a book? 147 times you say empathy or empathic. Right? Like, what made you want to write a book about empathy right now?
Well, the book is about creativity. The book is about the realities that all of us in society, culture are navigating today. There are three kind of primal forces, tsunamis that are coming at us. One is just the speed and acceleration of innovation. You can't go through the normal processes of innovation anymore. You can't build bridges from the past to the future. You need to create portals
I like
because
that a lot. Yeah.
technology is coming at us too quickly. By the time you build the bridge and go through the experimentation, risk assessment, uh, testing, development, what's on the other side of that bridge has already changed. The technology has changed. So that's number one. Number two is that the corporate model, the corporate infrastructure and architecture, 90+% of all corporations globally today are still built on Peter Drucker, 1952, the concept of the corporation, uh, models that were based on World War II General Motors production line, and they're outdated. They're overly decentralized, too many redundant silos, even within divisions, and so consolidation, breakdown of silos, which we're seeing on the federal government level, are necessary. They're important, but they need to be done with humanistic qualities.
Mm.
And I recognize that every major technological disruption, I go back to the printing press and the Renaissance, has been accompanied by a creative revolution, an explosion of creativity. Now, I go back 3,000 years to
Mm.
Taoism and a change of culture there, but that led to the implementation and development of the principles of Taoism. And what I realized as I was writing the book, that there were five core principles of Taoism that remain relevant, and they're fundamental to flexibility, belonging, balance, creativity being the core, integrity. These are the core fundamentals. And so creativity as kind of a focus or a source of how do you get your arms around the technology? And you do it by looking at the humanistic qualities that are fundamental to every part of our nature, our business. And if we build in and start looking at how do we do this, how do we navigate technological advances, how do we navigate the realities of what brands and marketers and all of us in business are challenged by today, and if we focus on how do we build human focused creativity into the models, that's going to define success going forward.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and so and you seem also fairly optimistic that there will be that role for human-led creativity.
Well, I chose, it's interesting, David. I choose in all of my books to be optimistic. It's more and more difficult to be optimistic. Uh, and we are going through some really, truly challenging times. No matter what the political perspective you bring to the reality, from a business point of view, we're confronting regulatory disruption, economic uncertainty, technological acceleration, cultural and workforce shifts, environmental and geopolitical volatility. From a marketing point of view, a more media-centric advertising point of view, we're dealing with commerce and retail marketing and distribution challenges, data and currency disruption, the collapse of the traditional marketing funnel. We're dealing with challenges on health and wellness, and we're dealing with fundamental challenges. It's interesting. Empathy has really become one of those words that we're not supposed to be using anymore, along with diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging. And I think that's a fundamental um, shift in where we've been, certainly for the last 15 years, and what for the advertising and marketing business has proved to be very successful. 15 years ago, when I launched Media Village, I did a research study evaluating 30 standard measures of job satisfaction, industry satisfaction, and emotional wellness. And advertising as an industry, along with media, ranked 13th out of 15 major industries, according to public information and governmental information, even. Today, we redid the study in 2024, 3,500 respondents from the advertising community across all sectors of the community. It was a while diversity is improving, other than gender diversity, it was not improving quickly enough. But nonetheless, all those 30 factors had improved dramatically over the 15 years based on the work that the advertising industry has done in DEI and mostly in education. We ranked third among 15 major industries. That's tremendous growth, but yet now we're moving backward again. And those investments are drying up. We're looking at across all of the nonprofits that are focused on diversity. All of us, including Media Village, are being challenged economically, and funding is being cut across the board for the very priorities of what we need going forward to grow and be successful, which are focus on human creativity, empathy, intuition, ingenuity. Those are the tools that are going to drive success going forward.
Well, and by the way, you also whether or not you take it, you also deserve a lot of credit for focusing on these issues before they become trendy, before it seems like there's even money to be made by celebrating women in the workplace and contributions from all kinds of different groups that we need to include in the workplace. So I mean, like I mean, and I say this, by the way, to the community as someone where I've done some writing for Jack's Atlas, and like the kinds of folks that I've interviewed, would be celebrating just achievements and how they're reaching Hispanic audiences or things like this, like before it seemed like everyone else was talking about this. So.
It's really important, Michael. Thank you for writing for Media Village. For all of you, Media Village is a SaaS platform that incorporates a free self-publishing thought leadership platform. And it really was developed and funded by the industry with the recognition that there is a need for educating the young workforce. 65% of agency employees today have been in the business fewer than 8 years. They come from different backgrounds than traditionally brought people into our community. 65% of that population is female. It's more diverse than the older population. They that the work that's been done by the advertising industry to develop a modern workforce that's competitive in the global marketplace has really been significant and meaningful. And again, now there's significant loss of funding for those programs that have been most valuable. You mentioned emotional intelligence. I combine that with social intelligence. The Tao of Leadership, the subtitle, Harmonizing Technological Innovation with Human Creativity in the AI Era, is really a blueprint. It's a blueprint based on the fundamentals of Taoism, and it's a blueprint that goes into how can you become socially intelligent? How can you become emotionally intelligent in your leadership model if it doesn't come naturally to you? And the vast majority of of executives, of leaders today, and for the last 70 years, have been focused on how do we invest in technology successfully? And a part of that in the last 15 years is how do we invest in our human workforce that was, of course, very disrupted during COVID. We're now navigating the challenges of back to work, full time in the workplace, part time, fully remote. We're navigating all those challenges. And the humanistic approach is not something that comes naturally to most leaders, which is why I felt a blueprint was important and valuable that focused on how do you how do you become empathetic when it might not be a part of the leadership skills you've had to use in the past? How do you become socially intelligent, emotionally intelligent? And how do you really advance and move creativity forward? And how does AI support, guide, and assist you as a collaborator in that process?
And so there's a lot here, and one of these things is like, so you talk about how yeah, there's a lot of support for programs to help make everyone rise up, and that a lot of that support on public and private levels being eroded right now. But yeah, but you're also talking about just some of these macro issues that are particularly trying times that like uh, no matter who's in power, things like shifts in the workforce, um, uh, shifts in climate refugees, yeah, like no one person or party is going to be able to go and stem the tide, and it seems like neither party even has a clear solution to the price of eggs, and we're grappling with that. But like when like the price of eggs is like this really sad joke. Like it's funny because it's true and because it's something that we feel, and if it's not eggs in your household, it's something else that like so many of our peers are struggling with, and like how is this going to get better? And on the on the business front, on the corporate front, there's a kind of different corporate table, right? Like a different kitchen table of like what are the fundamental issues that are just going to keep our business around a year from now, not like how do we make ourselves smarter and kinder and understand each other better, even creativity, right? Like creativity sometimes feels like a premium and not the like core thing you need to focus on.
Well, let me jump in right there on that point, David, because creativity is coming. It's coming. It's going to bubble up from the bottom. Creativity is not something you dictate top down. The Renaissance came because of the artists. You had funding for the arts, of course, but that was fundamentally the same type of funding that we need today to say, let's look at the fundamentals. Most of us in this audience are probably connected to the advertising and marketing business.
Mm-hmm.
We need to rethink the way that agencies are producing creativity. Today, one campaign could require thousands of implementations, which AI is doing successfully. But what's not being done successfully is we're not asking AI to reinvent the fundamental way we're messaging or how we're messaging. We're not really using the collaborative process to reinvent how we approach the industry. Now, the 30-second commercial Joe Jaffe likes to say it's obsolete. It's no longer relevant. It's no longer valuable. But if you look at the internet and what it created in user-generated content, the way TikTok is users are recreating, the way that gaming is recreating creativity and how you engage, advertisers really need to rethink. Now, I look at data. Michael Kasson said years ago, data is the new oil. Well, if data is the new oil, we've got an awful lot of spills and challenges to the environment going on because of data. Data is a disruptor, it's not a solution. Data is, oh, there's been an over-investment in our industry, billions and billions of dollars by the holding companies invested in data. One of the reasons Omnicom is acquiring IPG is because IPG has their investments in data that Omnicom is looking to attach itself to. Kantar is selling a lot of its assets for WPP ownership, part of that, uh, because of the value and opportunity that exists today. But data is a disruptor, it's not a solution. Roughly 80% of all media spending today is dependent on data and based on data. 20% are the sports sponsorships, the idea based, and that 20% is shrinking. Programmatic is increasingly the value in the measure of advertising value. Creativity, which is the foundation of advertising, is shrinking as a contributor to the success of marketing and advertising campaigns.
Mhm.
The investment in creativity is shrinking as opposed to growing. And that to me is where the opportunities are. It's why so many new, younger, smaller agencies that are focused on bringing media and creative and promotion and retail marketing together under a single umbrella, saying, let's reinvent the way we're approaching our marketplace, approaching our customers. And fundamentals of creativity have to shift, and that percentage of the ad budgets, the media and marketing budgets that are dependent now on data, that percentage that's dependent on creativity, innovation, ideation has to start growing. And in my opinion, AI is the fundamental source and resource that's going to allow that those spills to decline and that
Yeah.
focus to change, and for success and growth to be the foundation of marketing once again, rather than managing decline, which so many media advertising and marketing companies are doing today.
Well, I want to take this from a macro level to a
That
micro.
left you speechless.
Yeah, you did, but there's also a lot that I just can't wait to hear your take on. And and the one company I'm really curious about is Apple, right? Because you cite Apple as a leader in innovation and understanding consumers and just the consistency that they've had. And I will say that 6 a.m. I woke up too far before my alarm this morning, and I wound up watching the new Spike Jonze Apple ad, and it is tremendous. And then I was watching the one he did, I think it was in 2018, and rewatching that, and I see just the creativity and how well they are like that cultural zeitgeist. But they're also getting pilloried right now, right? Like especially for a book about AI, where it seems like how did Apple just so badly bungle this? And what do you make of all this?
I'm not going to really talk about how Apple bungled. I am going, however, to talk about, first of all, I have a chapter that's focused on examples of periods of time that we that demonstrated the validation of the idea that when there's major technological disruption, there's commensurate and synchronous explosion of creativity.
Mhm.
Steve Jobs personifies that, the combination of technological innovation with creative inspiration. You can go back to Leonardo da Vinci and Anthony Gaudi in Spain, Barcelona, for other examples of individuals in periods of time when there were commensurate explosion. And then I also talk about the leaders today who have made that shift to incorporate humanistic qualities in their management approaches, and companies that are thriving because of it. And whether we like it or not, Google, Microsoft, Apple are three of those companies. From a government point of view, um, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand is another example of someone who succeeded by incorporating humanistic qualities in their investment in technology. And so Tim Cook is one of those leaders. Now, I want you, David, to think about the idea that they're bungling AI and bungling technology, and look at whether or not they're also bungling relating to their consumer and their customer and building tools and resources. Now, all of us might complain about Siri,
Mhm.
and the upgrades to Siri are not competitive in that marketplace. I think that's an example to reinforce what you're saying. But at the same time, I think as a corporation, they're taking a very humanistic approach to how they lead. Now, taking a humanistic approach doesn't mean you're not consolidating, you're not shrinking down your workforce, you're not eliminating silos, which might mean eliminating uh, people, but how are you doing it? How are you approaching it? What are the models that you're developing to do it in a way that is embracing a, a, a caring, empathy in the models of your growth and technology? So um, I'm not the person to talk about that. Shelley Palmer can talk more about what's being bungled, what's not being bungled, what's being advanced, what's not being advanced. But I think today there are too few examples in our business, especially in marketing, of where we're taking the human qualities ahead of the data that's being dictating so many strategies today.
Yeah, and Chris, I don't know if you want to chime in directly, but your comments, I think it's a perfect follow-up to this.
Yeah, I was just, Jack, I put in the chat, you're talking about empathy. Isn't, I wonder if you view it this way, if empathy is kind of the superpower that enables, customer or consumer centricity, and aren't AI and data really just tools to get you there faster, better, smarter, or however that path is. Like, I mean, with the force change in the industry around the way we approach delivering marketing services, and frankly, leadership generally. I mean, in the end, aren't the most successful companies kind of using it that way or thinking of it that way?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, Chris. The um, Think about the generation that's being born right now, post AI, generative AI, 2020 and beyond, 2022 and beyond, and think about who and what they're going to be in 2050. Think about when they're taking the leadership in business, and their DNA, fundamental DNA, is going to be different because they will have grown up with AI as being an embedded part of who they are as people. Uh, they are going to see AI as a collaborative tool. I teach a class at the University of Arizona, juniors and seniors. They came into class and most of them had minimal experience with AI, and several of their professors were restricting them from using AI. That's foolish. It's like saying you can't use the internet. It is going to be and it already is a part of our culture, a part of our reality. And those growing up with it are going to really see machine intelligence as being partner in who they are and who they grew up with and how they use it. So the more we're building the systems and processes today to empower them, the more that we in our generations, whether you're a boomer like me or Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the more that we're using technology to advance our creativity, to understand and ask, how do I take these actions and build in empathetic principles? How do I build in the fundamentals of flexibility, stability, balance, integrity, harmony? How do I integrate technology with creativity? Uh, if we can ask AI those questions, which it has the ability to answer. Now, I use AI, there's still huge bias built into it. There are huge challenges around ethics and how we integrate ethics into AI, how we integrate inclusion, especially now when we've got a pushback on the fundamentals that are the most important aspects of how we move forward as a civilization and as businesses across all of our resources and future realities. How we build AI is built on the decisions that all of us are making, and the creators and builders of AI. And I do think that there's a responsibility to build diversity, inclusion, equity, empathy into those systems. And that's my greatest concern.
Yeah, Karen, please.
Did that answer there wasn't really a question there, Chris, other than, and I
Yeah.
do agree with what you said. Yes.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jeff.
I think it was actually a good like kind of synopsis of a lot of the book. I mean, it's definitely like one of the takeaways I got out of it. So yeah,
I do want to reinforce, David, that the book is a blueprint. It's a
yeah,
how-to. A lot of the things I'm talking about are fundamental, but it's a how do we do these things? It's
Mhm.
one thing to say we should do them. It's another to understand the principles of how do we look back literally at 3,000 years of history and process and say, how do we actually navigate these next 30 years? And how do we navigate literally the next week, month, and couple of years? Because the speed at which all of this is coming at us is so fast
Mhm.
that for us to depend on management and leaders to guide technology without the use of machine intelligence to help that process and depend more and more on AI and machine intelligence to guide the investment in technology, technology is going to be taking care of itself. It's we've got to make sure that the technology is also taking care of the human condition. And that means building in the qualities that are so important. And so then it becomes, well, how do we actually do that? And how do we do that in our organizations? And from a marketing point of view, how do we embrace and build brand new approaches to creativity? And one of the solutions I put out there is it's a back to the future. We're moving into upfront season in the network television marketplace and in the video marketplace. Uh, the upfront was built on sponsorships. Programs didn't get produced unless there were sponsors. Sports today, the fastest growing segment, the most important linear segment of the linear marketplace, is built on sponsorships and marketing partnerships and relationships. And that's what I believe we're going to see, a rebirth of the role of sponsorships. And it doesn't mean that the marketer and the content are connecting from a content point of view as we see on YouTube and TikTok, but it does mean that we're creating empathetically, emotionally with the experience of watching a program content and connecting it up with the marketer who's allowing us to have access to that program. And that was the fundamentals of the growth of television advertising that we've gotten away from. So those are just there are multiple how-tos in the book, and the last part of the book is a blueprint, an actual blueprint of here's the steps, 8 steps to go through. And those steps include looking at your organization and how you can consolidate, how you can break down silos, how you can reduce your investment in data, which there's an overinvestment in today. And then how can you build in the empathetic, emotional, and creativity component parts to it?
So yeah.
A very important topic, Jack. I really love it. And I love the title, The Dao. I just want to add something really important. I think that what we need is education. And I'm actually creating a video on this exact topic. The Dao is the background of our existence. And the Dao is, as Lao Tzu says, unseen and untouchable. It's mystery. Our background is mysterious. Machines, however, start at one. Everything that the machine generates is based on something that has been done in the past. The creativity of machine is not the creativity of human beings. It's distinctly different. And machines, they can manipulate images, they can rearrange and reorganize things. As you said, it's a tool that's now part of our tool set that we need to use. But in order to include the human creativity, we have to understand how human beings work so that we can include that as part of the equation. So it's very much with leadership, understanding that data alone is always what's in the past, and creativity is something that comes naturally and instantaneously out of us. This is, Noam Chomsky talks about the Descartes realization that human beings have the ability to respond to a situation with language that's appropriate to that situation, but it's not caused by it. Machines don't do that, but human beings do.
Thank you for that, Karan. And yes, the first chapter of my book focuses on Taoism and the connection between what I've written and Taoism. And the fundamentals of Taoism deserve enormous respect and understanding, and they are relevant. The word education is such an important one. My education is in, my master's degree is in media ecology, which was founded by Marshall McLuhan and Neil Postman. And I've referred to myself as a media ecologist. Neil Postman and Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message, amusing ourselves to death, public discourse in the age of show business, personify the realities that we're confronting today. They base their principles, their nonfiction principles, on H.G. Wells' The War of the World, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. The common thread is the sentence, "We're on a path." Taoism is a path. We're on a path between disaster and education. It's a common thread connecting science fiction to the realities that we're confronting today. And the solution is education. The challenge is in a marketplace of information that's barely useful for performing the most fundamental task, and where information is a commodity and where data is a commodity. How do we define and use education in a way where we're looking at core truths that everyone can relate to? And in Taoism, I found those truths that if we are consistent and look at harmony and balance and flexibility and stability and integrity as 5 fundamental principles, then we can begin to educate around the tools and resources that will drive us forward with emotional intelligence, social intelligence, empathy, ingenuity, and creativity. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And the Descartes reference is a particularly relevant one as well.
And Jack, one thing that I'm concerned about from where this is going, and you write about in your style, which is more of a positive way, not that you avoid some of the negative implications of these things, but when we get into personalization, okay, one thing I'm worried about is that we don't just have the Super Bowl, but like there are some day-to-day Super Bowl moments, and some of it is coming from brands like the new Spike Jones ad for Apple. But some of it is just that like we can go and we can pick up your book and we're all reading the same thing, albeit in different ways, because based on our own experiences and interpretation. But then with personalization that's driven by AI, and we can now get to the point where we're all sent to the landing page for your book, and each of us is seeing something totally different that's generated on the fly, that's based on our history, that's based on other kinds of attributes about us, and everything from the weather outside to what it overheard I was eating for breakfast yesterday, and all of this that. So when I say I'm here, and when Spirit says she's on landing page 2, that like we're actually looking at totally different things, right? And so in a way that's like AI powered empathy because it's trying to understand us and relate to us better, but in a way it's also confining us into our own world of one. And so how do we like still have those shared experiences?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there also, David. I'll go back to a couple of thoughts. Number one, in terms of the optimistic point of view and perspective, I do build around an optimistic look at where we're headed and how we get there. I do have a chapter that's focused on 2050, and it's a forecast, and it's based on 2 individuals born today who are now in their 30s and entering their 30s in 2050, and the realities of how they're navigating and managing that world based on the tools and resources they had as they were growing up, the AI tools and resources, and the differentiation, and they're representative of companies, organizations that are going to be successful and those that aren't going to be successful. And I kind of use the Kodak example versus not thinking that if they were actually the first ones to develop an internet connected camera, but believed it would be disruptive of photography, so they didn't continue to invest. But I also have a Bizarro 2050 chapter that says, all right, let's take a more dystopian view of these 30 years that we're moving through now. And here's what happens if we don't focus in on the humanistic qualities as we're moving forward. If we really put all of our eggs in the technology basket, and that leads to the reality that you're describing, where each individual lives in a bubble that's all their own, and shared experiences are often dictated by the algorithms or by the data rather than by their own emotional connections. So I do balance and show here's the different paths that right now we're at a pivotal moment that we can go down. It's that path between disaster and education. So I'm not sure there's a realistic direct answer, David, to how do we avoid that. But I do think it comes to making sure that when I'm when I ask DAL-E to draw an image of business people and it draws white men in ties and jackets, which it still does, I yell at it. I tell it that's unacceptable. I do not give me here's what you should be giving me. I impose my own ethics, if you will, in there. It, sometimes it's humorous what I get back. I actually have capture a whole series of images that uh, show how it listens and how it adapts or fails to. So I do think we have a challenge right now in the models that AI are developing without necessarily recognizing the role of ethics and humanity in the development. And that's where I think all of us, and especially brand marketers, advertisers have a huge responsibility here. How advertisers step up, especially those who lead technology within their organizations, how they step up within their own organizations with the tools and machine intelligence and machine learning and generative AI tools that are being embraced and developed, how they make sure that ethics, how marketers make sure that agencies are developing campaigns that embrace the fundamental principles that have been so important to us that are now being questioned and attacked, how brand marketers step up or don't step up to reinforce the fact that marketers and agencies and media companies have basically, if not eliminated, certainly reduced their investment in the trade associations and the nonprofit organizations that have been doing so much good for our industry around creating meaningful organizations, the kind of work that you're doing, David, in this organization to bring people together around shared experiences, shared learning. The reduction in funding for these initiatives, I think, is a dangerous reality we should all be challenging.
And by the way, I did want to give credit because I keep seeing him on my camera, Michael Donnelly over at the Association of National Advertisers, the ANA, like when you were talking about some of the positive direction that the ad industry has gone, and I credit the ANA and people like Michael who've been helping shepherd that.
Yeah, and within the ANA, and I see Michael there, and I'll see him in a couple weeks at the Tech and AI conference that the ANA is hosting in Austin. I urge everyone to be there. But the work that AIM, Alliance for
Multicultural marketing.
Thank you, multicultural marketing, and AEF, the ANA Advertising Education Foundation. You know, funding is endangered for these types of programs across the industry, and that really comes down to brands and marketers stepping up and saying this is important to our business, to our future, and to the future of our growth.
Yeah, Mike, I don't know if you want to say anything, but I just had to at least give you a shout out there, seeing you.
No, I don't want to interrupt the flow other than to say thanks for the shout out. I hugely admire what you're building here with this community. And I've always admired your work, Jack, and I'm a huge fan of the challenge we all have ahead of us. I think that's that's what this group is so important about. There's a tremendous challenge we have ahead of all of us. And like Jack, I tend to be optimistic, sometimes to a fault. But the future is incredibly bright and also a little unknown. So it's going to be exciting times. But, welcome, you, of course, always, and your community to learn more about what the ANA is doing at ana.net/AI.
Nice. And then that's Michael. Thanks for just showing up. And Jamie, you had a question before or comment?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I bought the book. Everybody, go buy the book. Second, that bravo, Jack. That was the last bit. There was just like I was sitting there, like clapping to myself. There you go. And if you weren't going to say the ANA, I was going to say the ANA. Like the problem that I see though is organizations like that and all the others, XRSI, Cost Institute, the ones I put in the chat, MKI, that are all out there. This one, I don't say this one included necessarily, but it's despite the system that's in place.
Mm.
It's the system in place that's all pushing in this direction, and you can give, you can donate, you can be a part of an institution that lives inside of that system, but it's a stopgap. It's a finger in the hole that's supporting a system. It's the things that we have to do to make sure that we are uh, creating just different invisible hands of the market. The whole, the Mad Men. It is our fault that we sold everything that was pushed from the GM thought leadership back in the 50s. We're the guys who invented love to sell nylons, that line. That's on us. And so the question I actually have is, right after this, I leave for teaching a class at CCNY, and it's a marketing PR class, and they have a client. It's Fox Corporation, but they want to do mental health in student space. And one of the teams, based on their studies, wants to explore the burgeoning effects of AI on mental health. And we're really putting it in the context of social media. If we were having this conversation 20 years ago, we'd be having almost the exact same one about social media. We don't know where this is going to go. One thing dystopian we could say is people will start being in their own bubbles, and depression could go through the roof. Guess what happened? It's exactly that. So are there any things that you're seeing? Are there any, like, we use the stat that like 25% of Gen Z is already, their best friend is character AI that they've made, and they rather talk to a perfect person that's not a person than actually have the difficulty of socializing with ghosting, immature people like themselves. Um, what do you see as ways forward in this really nascent, but the only time we actually have a say moment to build those structures, to create that incentive, to push us, not just yell from a corner, hey, you should be over here, but actually give the incentive to move in those good directions, especially when it comes
Sherry,
to
yeah,
the effects of AI.
Sherry Turkell has done a lot of work over the last 30 years on mental health and the impact of social media, especially on mental health. I think COVID, brought a lot of people into gaming and other places where my grandkids socialize on Fortnite, and it's been one of their, it's where they do come together as community and in a collaborative model. You're really stating the biggest challenge of how do we create community in a world where part of that community are the collaborators we're going to have in AI, and how generative AI becomes a collaborative partner. And the generation growing up today, part of their community will be in the machine intelligence, and how that machine intelligence is informed by the greater good as opposed to what's good for that individual at that particular moment, is a big question mark. I don't have an answer to that question, but I do know that we are confronted by a lot of realities today. I think the common thread of my career over the last 50 years has been that people have always said, Jack, you're 15 years ahead of your time, you're prescient. Uh, there is no ahead of our time today. Technology is moving at such a fast rate that we're unable as humans to catch up with it or to stay even with it. It's running ahead of our abilities to navigate and manage. So technology will be managing technology. I'll go back to my core principles that if we focus on harmony, stability, balance, flexibility, and integrity, and into that include creativity and ethics, then we're going to find that common path to come together as humans and use technology as a collaborative tool rather than as a tool that defines who we are and what our connections are to society. I know we're ending time. I do just want to say two things. One,
Yeah, please.
yes, 2 more days, 99 cents at Amazon. Moves up to $2.99 for the ebook, but the book, the hardcover book, is for your bookshelf, I think. But today, the
Like
24th, in this week, my new book comes out, and it's Creativity Unleashed. This is a true how-to. This every page is exercises, ways to develop your creativity and use it within your day-to-day life reality. I'm really excited about this book because this is a companion piece. This is the leadership piece this is the everyone
Mhm.
can use piece. So, Michael, I'll have a couple of copies of both of them at the event in a couple of weeks at the conference. But I think that's what's really important. We need to combine the realities of how we educate, introduce, embrace, and collaborate with AI today as a real resource and tool. And then also how, as leaders, we implement our growth models around the humanistic qualities that can drive businesses forward, with a recognition that for the last 70 years, we've been dependent on technology to drive our business forward. The next 70 years, the next 7 days are going to be built on how we introduce humanistic qualities that we've been discussing into our organizational models, and do it successfully and with a vision that it will contribute to growth. I think that what Mark Pritchard has always said, doing good is good for business. I think that's being challenged right now, but our definition of what is good is being challenged.
Yeah.
And I think if we can go back to those core fundamentals of Taoism and implement them and understand them, then we'll all come, whatever our political points of view are, we will all come together around a blueprint for leadership going forward.
I love it, Jack. Well, thank you for sharing this blueprint with us and your thoughts behind it and all this. Can't wait to see the handbook as well. And yeah, this has just been tremendous. So thank you for being here and for allowing me to learn from you so much over the years, and look forward to doing more.
Early on, you said that I agreed to speak. I asked to join this conversation. So I appreciate your inviting me, and I appreciate all of you being here.
Anytime, Jack. All right, thanks everyone for joining us.